Hello and welcome back to the Functional Effect Optimization Group episode. Oh, what are we on tonight?
I think it's
Episode
19. Yeah,
19.
19.
And we're continuing our deep health series. And last time we touched on deep health, we tackled physical health. And tonight we are going to tackle what I think is one of the more underestimated facets of deep health,
hmm
which is relational health.
hmm
And people obsess, really about like supplements and macros and their programming and red light therapy and cold plunging and sauna, but they completely ignore the quality of their interpersonal
hmm
relationships that surround them every single day. And the reality of the situation when it comes to relationships is that you can't out supplement dysfunctional relationships.
No, as we know, like we look at health in different facets, and there's six. So, relationships is one of them, and how positive and how healthy those relationships are going to make a huge difference, impacting your overall health. So they're all interwoven. And so your relationship health is going to affect your physical health. It's going to affect your mental health. It's going to affect a lot of things.
Yeah, relational health really has a trickle down effect in terms of the cascade of what it does affect. And when we see somebody who's struggling with their relational health, it impacts everything from their stress hormones to their ability to regulate their nervous system to their overall systemic inflammation. Um, I mean, we could talk about their mental health and the trickle effect that it has into their
Yeah. And
mental
you can
health.
even go into the immune system, and
Absolutely.
how that's affected as well.
And I think what the really interesting thing is that many people don't realize that they are relationally unhealthy because, and I've talked about this idea before of becoming the frog in the boiling pot, and you've lived in dysfunction for so long that you don't really realize what you're exposing yourself
hmm
to on a daily basis and how it is impacting you because you see what you're living in as normal. And I understand that. But if you hang with us, I'm going to talk about some of the signs and signals that you might be living in a dysfunctional relational health sphere in a little bit. So sit tight if you think this might be you, but you're
hmm
unsure because I'm going to give you some surefire signs. But let's talk about Tyler. What exactly is relational health?
So let's talk about probably a good way of what it's not. Uh, being extroverted. That's not it. Uh, having a ton of friends, being overly social, consistently social, and or just being really avoidant of conflict. So healthy relationships are relationships where you can be honest, you feel safe, respected, there's proper boundaries. Um, oh, there is when things happen, there's the ability to have repair there. And this is where like two people can actually grow together, and it is an actual symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, and I think the big one that I think Tyler missed and maybe unintentionally skipped over to let me fill this in and segue is that there's a major hefty dose of accountability from both parties in the relationship, but especially when it comes to yourself, because as we know, we are the only one
Yep.
that we have control over. But I think one of the biggest misconceptions about relational health is that it's about getting everyone else to show up differently in your relationship. But relational health actually starts with asking yourself, what am I contributing to the dynamic of this relationship? And that's the really uncomfortable part and where most people get it really wrong. Because most people hyper focus on what their spouse isn't doing, what their parents might have done wrong in their upbringing, what their friends should change. But growth, real marked growth starts when you become accountable for your communication, your triggers, your emotional reactivity, your avoidance patterns, your expectations, and your inability to set boundaries. And I want to pause on that last one for just a second because that is what I want you to really.
Well, I'm gonna have you take it for a second here because our son needs a little bit of help. So I'm gonna help him quickly. Sarah can keep talking. I will be back in 1 minute.
Well, the inability to set boundaries, the inability to set boundaries is one of the biggest shifts that we as a whole need to make. And I know it is a place where I personally have had the biggest personal shift in my journey. And instead of trying to fix each other, we started asking, how can I show up differently to contribute differently to this relationship? And that one question realistically started to change everything for us within our relationship and in every relationship that we have, because we started to apply that same thought process to all of our relationships, not just our relationship. Um, but asking yourself that question of how can I show up differently?
Mm.
That's where things are going to start to shift. And I want to talk about, and Tyler can take this next part over because I think that you guys are ready to hear a little bit more of his voice, but why relational health matters physiologically.
Yeah. So I think simply humans are not meant to be isolated. We're built for a connection. We're built to be a village of people working together. So anytime you isolate someone, their health is going to get significantly worse. I think we can all kind of see anytime that you've been kind of stuck somewhere where you're not being able to interact with a lot of people, it's gonna be tough. It's tough. And when you're around people who are actually equal, helping you, you're doing life together, you feel significantly better. So yeah, we're wired for connection. And one of the big ones is oxytocin. So oxytocin is a chemical in our body that is a bonding hormone. And so but it does on a health level, it does more than that, than just like, so like not just bonding. It actually does like lowers cortisol levels, reduces blood pressure, improves stress resilience, emotional regulation, and just feeling safe and overall trusted. So I mean, absolutely, I think all of us can agree that we want that.
So I think it's really important to stress the fact, like, you don't need to remember any of the hormones that we talk about tonight or specifically what they do. But what you need to remember is that when you have healthy relationships, the body produces hormones and neurotransmitters in your brain that quite literally improve your health outcomes.
Mhm.
And just on the converse, when you have unhealthy relationships, the inverse is going to happen. It is going to negatively impact your health outcomes. And chronic relational stress can keep someone in their sympathetic or their fight or flight portion of their nervous system on a pretty constant state.
Yeah.
So, for that person, that frog in the boiling pot who doesn't realize the levels of stress that they're under, who's in that chronic sympathetic fight or flight state, that relationship that they're stuck in, that toxic relationship that they don't even realize is bad, might actually be killing them.
Yeah.
So, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you guys know me. I don't like to sugarcoat things. Taking control and taking accountability for your relationships is so important because we are walking around in a dysregulated world. And a lot of it is due to our unawareness or our inability to see just how toxic
Yeah.
some of our relationships have become.
Yeah, and connected people are generally happier people. I think we can agree if you have a great relationship and a great marriage, you're going to live longer. If you aren't connected to your spouse, you're probably going to have statistically a shorter lifespan.
There's data, and it's strong data that shows that loneliness and social isolation actually increase your all risk mortality quite dramatically. Meaning, poor relational health is not just emotionally painful, but it's actually physically harmful.
Yep.
And I think that it's important to mention that when you talk about what is a relationship,
I think we can look at the obvious ones,
sure.
right?
So
Like,
like you and I,
yeah. So
we are a relationship.
we're a
Obviously,
relationship.
we're married.
Right?
But what else are we talking about when we talk about relationships?
So I mean, it's everyone's, weekly, maybe monthly look at it, and you say like, well, what's going on with your friendships? Do you have friends that you can actually talk to when you need them? Family dynamics, what's that look like?
Those can
And
be
those are,
spicy.
oh, I mean, no one has a. I mean, I'm convinced no one has a normal family. There's so many different variables to it. What's your work situation like? Do you actually get along with your
For sure.
coworkers? Your neighbors, um, community groups, churches, uh, and then one that no one really talks about as much is that relationship with yourself, which is
Goo.
that inner dialogue with yourself and um, how you treat yourself on a daily basis.
And if we're being honest, which we always are here, but if you're being honest with yourself, you're probably meaner to yourself than you are to any other human being. And when that is your dynamic with self, remember your body doesn't know the difference between you telling it something and someone else telling it something.
Mm-hmm.
And your words carry weight that impact your health.
Yeah. So one negative comment to yourself to equal that, you need around 7 to 9 positive comments. And I know there's hardly anyone out there who's like talking himself up. Maybe there is, like talking themselves up that much in their own head and not being negative with themselves in a day. So it is always a challenge. And that goes the same thing with talking with your coworkers, or if you like, if you're
Or if
going
you're a
to, if
boss.
you're a boss, you need to praise far more than you put the fist down.
Yeah. So let's actually dive into some of the signs that your relational health might need a little bit of work. So if you are somebody who is sitting here realizing, okay, maybe this is an area that I have neglected a little bit, Tyler, I want you to talk about what are some of the common signs or signals that you might be experiencing some relational stress.
Yeah, relational stress when you're in that season, or that's just a large part of your life. Constant resentment,
That's a common one.
uh, hard, like, just avoiding all hard conversations, isolating yourself emotionally, uh, people pleasing, feeling chronically misunderstood because there's just no connection there. Lack of meaningful relationship, very surface level stuff that's going on. Difficult trusting people, never taking ownership. I mean, there's so many things that go into this, but those are some of the most common signs.
And I think one of the sneaky ones that we didn't mention is when you're tolerating unhealthy dynamics from another person because setting boundaries with them feels really uncomfortable or unmanageable. Um, and also, if we're mentioning it, busyness plays a really huge role
Huge
here
role.
too, because a lot of adults drift into emotional neglect, um, and which ends up being relational neglect. And it's not because they're bad people,
No,
but it's because they have simply stopped being intentional.
stop being intentional. And I think a lot of people are not equipped with all the skills that they need to deal with the hard conversations. I think everyone wants to have a peaceful life, but
I'm
to
sure.
but to truly to have a peaceful life involves some conflict. you need to kind of have it a little bit hard in the front side so that it's probably going to be significantly easier on the backside.
Yeah, hard conversations are never going to be a point of pleasure for most people, but they are a necessary part of growth is having those uncomfortable conversations so that
Mm-hmm.
everyone can be on the same page. And I will tell you the biggest um grain of sand within a relationship that will wear it away is lack of communication.
Yeah, yeah. With Sarah and I mean, this is just personal. Sarah and I communicate every day. Like we talk, I don't know. I would say on the low end, half an hour a day. That is like when we're really busy. We're always connected. I mean, sometimes it's hours, but we are in constant contact, and that can be text messaging, phone calls, in person, all different ways.
Yeah. So if we dive into some actionable steps, which is always going to be what our goal is here in the group, what are some of the things that you can do to improve your relational health? I think that we've already touched on one of the big ones, which is taking accountability.
Mhm.
I think it's the first and the biggest thing that you can do when you are trying to improve your relational health is taking ownership on your side of the
Yeah,
street.
be your CEO. You control your life.
You can't control other people. And the sooner you realize that little factoid of life and accept it for what it is, you realize what you can control.
Mhm.
And the things that you can control are your communication,
Yeah, you can do your reactions and boundaries.
your emotional maturity or lack thereof. And we're going to have some great resources for you in a minute to work on that emotional maturity.
You're billing just how consistent you are on a daily basis and weekly basis.
Systems are king.
Systems.
Again, we always fall back to systems, right? And your willingness, being ready, willing, and able to show up to repair.
Mhm.
Because forgiveness and repair of relationships are, again, this is where people can really get it wrong.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where like when people are emotionally healthy within their relationships, and that's really what I think the big thing we're looking at, like that emotional health of relationship that impacts your life. I mean, it may be one of the biggest.
And I think one of the biggest tools that we have used for us in our journey has been the emotionally healthy relationship series.
Yeah, that's by a guy named Peter
Scazzaro.
Scazzaro, pastor. Excellent book series.
And the book, the workbook, and the course, we did it through, it started as a series that we were exploring in one of our Bible studies, and then we kind of took it and ran with it from
Yep.
there. And the reason why we really like this series is that it really helps you identify the unhealthy patterns that you're bringing to the table within your relationships, and they're patterns that you may not even realize you have. And I know for myself, I there were some things, even with a degree in psychology and with years of coaching under my belt, going through this series is very eye-opening in what you may be bringing to any relationship dynamic that you might be struggling with, and your part in how you can work towards repair. So I think the thing that I really like about the practical relationship skills were the things that we aren't necessarily all taught as kids growing up.
Hmm. Yeah, like I mean, I don't think as kid I mean, most we're we're millennials. You look at um what is healthy communication, like, and then also like when like as a married couple, we obviously we're gonna have fights, right? So like actually listening to each other without being defensive, and we call it fighting fair. So like I mean the easy example, like name calling, right? That's completely ridiculous, but it happens a lot in many couples. So there's ways to have proper boundaries and slow things down, in a way that you can speak honestly without getting without attacking.
Well, and I think even learning how to create and clarify your expectations within any relationship, I
Hmm.
think is a really valuable tool because expectations are oftentimes what ends up muddying the waters because one person might have a different idea of what that relationship is supposed to look like and then gets disappointed when the other person doesn't show up in the way that they had anticipated.
Hmm.
So I think learning how to create clarity around your relationships and what each person's role looks like within that relationship is also really key.
Yeah, it's great to know like what Sarah actually wants from me and her being vocal to that and what I want from her. Nothing wrong with that, right? And that can create some conflict at times, but you're going to work through that. If you're in a marriage, you're going to work through that, but be like, this is what I want. And that's, once we got good at that, things were a lot easier.
And because behaviors are caught and not taught, most people inherited these relational patterns. So, unfortunately, many of you are walking around with only the relational patterning that you learned from your parents or your primary caregivers, but you've never had a chance to intentionally learn from those relational patterns, which for both of us that's where EHR or the emotionally healthy relationship series really allowed us to peel that proverbial onion, not from a
Mhm.
place of like guilt or shame, but from a place of seeking understanding and
Mhm.
seeking growth and trying to build a bridge of communication. And it really worked well for us. And we really believe in that book series. So I hope that a lot of you go out and check that out after you listen to this tonight. What is another way that we can work on our relational health?
Other ways that we can work on our relational health. Like actual examples, like things that we do on like a weekly basis or a daily basis, or like, I mean, I think just being in general intentional, right? Like we make sure that we like I said, we connect every day. Making sure we do date nights, walks together, um, even car. I mean, sometimes it's just car rides. There's a ton of things, but it just depends on your relationship, where you're at in the season of life with kids and everything. But it's we're making it a point.
Yeah, if you have started to feel like you are living with a efficient roommate, this is where you can really do some work on your relational health is by being more intentional and sowing seeds where you want there to be flowers blooming.
Yeah.
And that looks like a lot of different things for a lot of different couples. But it might be something as simple as just expressing your appreciation for the other person on a regular basis. It could be simple text messages. I always say, think about when I talk to my clients about this, think about the things that you did when you were dating.
Hmm.
Start doing more of those things again. And that in and of itself, a lot of times is all it takes because it's intentionality. When you are dating someone, you are incredibly intentional.
Yeah, I think like the goal is to be dating your spouse or who you're with for the rest of your life. Like, and marriage is awesome, but people get comfortable, right? And where comfort isn't really a good thing. In the most easy sense, like when things get comfortable, that's like complacency. It doesn't challenge you. There's not a lot of growth in comfort, and
No.
so it's no different than a relationship. Like there has to be intentionality and being like sometimes you got to spice things up a little bit, change it up, go do some different things because in or create some environments that it's going to create some sort of growth within the relationship.
And I think the third and probably the biggest part or the biggest skill that people need to learn when they're improving their relational health is how to have healthy conflict,
Mhm.
how to handle conflict, how to show up in conflict. and how to learn the repair that needs to happen on the other side of that conflict.
Because again, we typically see what our parents did. That's
Sure.
true. So a lot of people maybe their parents never fought, right? And so they're like, oh, my parents never fought. And so there was never problems, right? So they don't even know how an actual conflict happened because they all saw it would happen behind closed doors. Or opposite, they see their parents fight a ton, but then there's never any resolution.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, fight, fight, fight. Nothing ever happens, actually. So that doesn't feel like there's any progress there.
Yeah, because conflict in and of itself is not the unhealthy part. Avoidance is actually arguably worse than conflict. But when we learn healthy conflict, what we work on learning is how to apologize, how to stay calm during a disagreement. So, agreeing to disagree is a great way to put that. How to actively listen. And, like Tyler said, listen without defensiveness. How to repair after there's been a
Yeah.
rupture, which is, again, where a lot of people have rupture and then they abandon.
Yep. It's too hard. Boom. And then the one that absolutely drives me bananas because it will ruin a relationship faster than it is when you start weaponizing vulnerability. Because as like a relationship, especially a really tight relationship, there should be vulnerability there. And when people open up and then they weaponize it, that will crush the wall. I mean, it put walls up and walls up and walls up and walls up.
Absolutely. And I think one of the big ones, learning how to pause before reacting in any given situation relationally is huge because a lot of damage is done in that emotional moment immediately following any big emotion.
Yeah.
And a lot of people react from their own ego,
Mm-hmm.
the defensiveness of feeling like they need to protect themselves because they feel unsafe in that moment. Um, Unhealed woundings that they have from people that are completely unrelated to the person who they're having the conflict
Because
with.
most people react in a way that has nothing to do with that situation. It's from past situations.
Absolutely. Instead of slowing down and responding with intentionality. So the idea of taking a slow, deep breath and giving yourself just enough time to think about what you're going to say before you open your mouth, that is usually enough time to turn the tide of what's about to happen within that relationship. So it doesn't mean that you need to get up and walk away or go take a 15-minute hiatus and come back, but just take a breath and pause. And that is usually going to be enough for you to step into your logical brain and out of your emotional one. So at the end of the day, you have to be able to audit your relational environment. And this part might sting a little for some of you. And I know that this stung for me when I started doing this myself, but not every relationship should have unlimited access to you. I want you to let that sink in for a moment. Not everyone should have 24/7, 365 access to you.
Yeah, and because your environment matters, right? And it's easy would be like work 24/7, not healthy. But now marriage, that's healthy. You should have relatively 24 access, to each other.
Absolutely. But if every relationship in your life becomes draining, negative, chaotic, manipulative, and feels like it is critical, it is going to negatively impact your health. Case in point. Um, Healthy boundaries are part of relational health, and boundaries are not punishment. That is, I think, something that needs to be clarified because a lot of people are uncomfortable with boundaries because they feel like boundaries are a form of punishment towards the other person. No, no, my friend. Boundaries are nothing more than clarity. They are nothing more than setting expectations for the other person and for yourself. So if there is one thing that we want
Mm.
for all of you to take away from tonight, it is that relational health is not optional.
No, we're designed to be connected. It's healthy connection, very important.
And your relationships are either going to regulate you or they're going to dysregulate you.
Mm-hmm.
And improving your relational health is much less about you controlling everyone else around you and way more about you becoming someone who contributes peace, honesty, maturity, safety, and intentionality into your relationships.
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, I want you to remember that you don't need the perfect relationship to begin improving relational health. You just need to have awareness and a willingness to take ownership and accountability. And small, consistent actions matter.
Yeah. An honest conversation, apology. Like think about one person you could apologize to, one boundary you need to create, uh, one intentional date night, maybe with your wife or husband, um, or just the ability to actually listen, like actually hear what the other person is saying and not think about what you're going to say next. That's where a lot of change starts with people and with your relationship, relational health. So, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. So I think we're gonna have more episodes coming at you, diving into the next part, which I'm not 100% sure what the next one is, top of my head, for the 6 deep health facets. So, everyone, have a great night.
And remember, until next time, you deserve to feel your best.